I know that right now the movie only kind of exists in theory. It's this weird nebulous place where, as far as we know, it's supposed to come out in 2 years. But then again, Matt Reeves has said that the script isn't even finished yet. So God only knows at this point if the movie's ever going to come out. And you know what movie it is? It's the Batman Part 2. There's like speculation about what it's going to be about and what we're dealing with. But as far as we know, I don't think anything has actually been confirmed just yet. So I would like to take this opportunity to speculate and kind of fanboy out for a little while and talk about what I would like the second movie to be if I were to somehow get my way. And if you want to indulge me, then let's spend the next few minutes together just talking about it. Because I have been around the block when it comes to Batman. I watched the old Adam West show. I've seen all four of the Burton-verse movies. I've watched the shows. I've watched the animated series, Brave and the Bold, The Batman, Beware the Batman. I've seen Batman Beyond, the Nolan trilogy, seen Ben Affleck, and obviously I've seen Robert Pattinson. And to this day, I don't think that like anything in live action has come close to encapsulating the character the way that Batman the Animated Series or The Brave and the Bold were able to do. And it's because each iteration of live action Batman post Adam West, back when the technology was extraordinarily limited, they're always afraid to embrace at least one aspect, you know? And even with as popular as the Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale trilogy was, those movies, even with including Bane, were not willing to allow Venom to be a part of the story. How do you do Bane with no Venom? Oh, he's just strong for some reason. I think it was that like he was in constant pain and his mask would administer him anesthesia so that he couldn't feel anything that Batman was doing to him. Come on. This is comic books. You know, Batman is a character who hangs out with gods and aliens and like they're in a speed dial. We can embrace the sillier, more comic book aspects of Batman without sacrificing the character. And you know how I know that? Because that's exactly how Batman the Animated Series works. If you're still with me, I would greatly appreciate it if you leave a like and comment below. Tell me anything. Tell me how your day was. You know, I just want to try to get that engagement up so that my videos get shown to more people. Alright, back on track. That show had him fighting people like Clayface, Killer Croc, Dollface, the Mad Hatter, the Clock King, you know. But he was still the straight man, and he was still dark and brooding and sinister and gloomy and all that good stuff. You can have all of that while still keeping in mind that this is a comic book. We do still have a fantasy character on our hands. Batman is more serious. Yes, he is darker in tone, but he's also he's a comic book character, you know. I just like there's no other way to put it other than his best friend is Superman. So for as much as I enjoy the Robert Pattinson version of the character, I'm concerned that Matt Reeves is still not willing to embrace that side. I was saying 3 years ago when the first movie came out that I would like for Clark Kent to appear in the next movie. Doesn't have to be Superman, but I would like for Clark Kent to interview Bruce Wayne in the next movie. And another thing that I would like is for Bruce and Batman to have more distinct personalities. I understand that what they were going for in the first movie is that Batman wasn't necessarily an alter ego for Bruce. It was just a way for him to get his stress out, for him to, you know, assert his will on his city. It's not so much a crusade that he does out of some sort of sense of purpose. At least that's not what I got from the movie. It's just an excuse to hit people because he's hurt and he wants to hurt others, right? So Bruce Wayne isn't really the kind of person that makes these grand appearances and hosts these dinners at Wayne Manor or anything like that, that we would see the Christian Bale Bruce Wayne do, at least in Batman Begins. And even though there's not a whole lot of like public facing Bruce Wayne in Batman vs. Superman, there's still enough distinction between Bruce and Batman in Ben Affleck's portrayal to kind of capture that aspect of the spirit of the character. Robert Pattinson, for as much as I enjoyed him, there is none of that because there's none of that in the script. So I'm hoping that with Bruce deciding to no longer weaponize fear, but to instead use hope, then we get something more, I don't know, we get more of a dichotomy there. And to exemplify that, on the other side of the story, there's a couple different villains that we could use here, but I'll talk about that in just a second. Pardon the interruption, it's your boy Toxic Boyo, and I wanted to take a brief moment to let you know about the Toxic Touch Productions Patreon. I'm not currently monetized on YouTube, but I still want to bring you the best content that I possibly can. I want to make those videos that you love, and I want them to be the best that they can be. But I need a little help. That's where you guys come in. If you want to support me directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/ToxicTouchProductions or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. For even just $5 a month, you can get your name included in the credits at the end of the video, gain access to exclusive channels on the Discord, and you get specialized merch at no extra cost. It only gets better as the tiers go higher. Go check it out. Thanks for listening and thanks for supporting my dreams. Now let's get back to the video. I think that it would be really poetic to use Two-Face as the primary antagonist for this movie. Unfortunately, you might not want to tread that ground with doing the second movie about Two-Face, just like Christopher Nolan did. But the thing is, the Aaron Eckhart Two-Face also did not have a split personality. He was just kind of the same guy all the time. Like, yes, he got more aggressive and angry, and he was more outright evil after he got half his face burnt off, but there was not Harvey and Two-Face. They didn't have different speech patterns. They didn't have different personalities like you're used to from the comics or from the 90s series. So I think that if you play up Two-Face the way that he's supposed to be, not only is he primary antagonist material, he doesn't have to be second fiddle to the Joker, but you could also have a nice reflection of Batman if we're going in the direction where Bruce Wayne and Batman are properly two characters that are divided from each other and have their own personalities and different purposes for existing. Another direction that you could go in, like I mentioned a little while ago, Bruce no longer wants to use fear as a weapon for the criminals of Gotham. He wants to use hope. But, as we've seen, he is capable of inspiring copycats. What about Dr. John Crane, the Scarecrow? Somebody else who weaponizes fear. Full stop, Scarecrow is my favorite Batman villain of all time. I've talked about this on the channel before, but it's been a long time since I've talked about Batman in general, so it hasn't come up in a while. But Scarecrow is unequivocally my favorite Batman villain of all time. Top 3, after him, it would be Ra's al Ghul and probably Bane or Mr. Freeze, one of those two. But I think it would be interesting if, just as Batman decides to stop using fear, maybe his new, gentler, more hopeful approach is having an unintended result, or it's not as effective as fear was, and crime has started to go back up despite Batman still being just as active as he ever was, and now he's properly called Batman. He's not just called Vengeance or whatever the hell they called him in the first movie, because the Riddler is the only person that ever calls him Batman, but he calls him the Batman. So it seems like it seems like in that movie he's not actually called Batman yet, but excuse me. Here he would be properly called Batman. He'd probably have a new suit, one that's a little less scary, but it's just not having the desired effect. So now you have Scarecrow, who's out here using fear against the criminals of Gotham. Now, you might not want to go that route because it kind of treads the same ground as the first movie. I think that the best way to avoid that is to not lean into that, like, goodness gracious, that David Fincher mystery movie type of thing, the murder mystery where it's like, oh, who's doing it? Especially because when you watch the Batman for the first time, you know who it is. You know it's the Riddler, right? And so you're just waiting for Batman to put it together and to figure it out and to catch him. The problem, though, with movies like that is that the rewatch value, especially on a movie that's pushing 3 hours long, is pretty low. So if we take that aspect out and we just focus on Scarecrow, maybe Bruce finds out early on and it's just about a matter of like catching him or proving it or whatever. But I would like to really explore Scarecrow and again allow him to take center stage. There's villains that Christopher Nolan uses, but they're held back by the fact that they work for or take orders from somebody else, or they're carrying out somebody else's will. Two-Face was held back by the Joker. Scarecrow was held back by Ra's al Ghul, as they like to call him, and Bane was held back by Talia al Ghul. I think that any of the three of them have the potential to be a primary antagonist. Not that you necessarily only need one, because, you know, the last movie had Falcone and Penguin and Riddler. You can do two villains. I just don't necessarily think that Scarecrow should be taking orders from somebody or doing somebody else's bidding. That's just how I feel about it. Also, I think it's time to introduce Robin again. I know that there's like that Batman Brave and the Bold movie that James Gunn's version of the DC Universe is supposed to be cooking up, but there's no release date. We've only got a director, and I'm not exactly enthusiastic about that. No actor, none of that. And as far as I can tell, that's supposed to be the Damian Wayne Robin. I want Dick Grayson. I want this movie to start with a Flying Grayson's show. Or maybe you can make it a little bit more contemporary. We'll do Tim Drake, and I don't know. I think it's a little difficult to start with Tim Drake as the first Robin, so Dick Grayson's probably the way to go so that we can just introduce that concept. And if you're uncomfortable with the idea of an 8-year-old boy wearing spandex and getting shot at, we can make him 15 to 16 years old, around the same age that Peter Parker is when he starts his Spider-Man career. But I think that if we're going in the direction of softening up the Batman character, which, mind you, is the purpose of Robin's creation in the comics back in the 40s in the first place, was because Batman was a little too hard-edged, and kids did not want to read Batman comics because of it. They put a kid on the cover so that children could see Robin, identify with him, and they'd want to read Batman again. If, in universe, Batman is trying to reform his image and come across as a little bit gentler, then I think the correct answer is Robin. That's just me. But it's a shame that for all these iterations of Batman that we've gotten, there's been no discussion about Robin. The closest we've had to a Batman with a Robin in my lifetime was Batman vs. Superman, where Robin was dead. And apparently it was a Dick Grayson Robin. And then we had our live-action Robin on the Titans series, but he wasn't working with Batman. I don't even know, all these years later, if he was ever actually on screen with Batman. Or, well, there was no Batman on that show, with Bruce Wayne at any particular moment, because nobody ever really talked about that show the whole time it was on. So, I really think it's important that we focus on introducing Robin. But that's just me. I could be completely wrong about that. You guys can tell me what you think. I would like for Selina to make a return. I don't need her to be a primary character the way that she was in the previous movie, but I would like to know that she's still out there and Bruce is still letting her get away with things that he shouldn't, and he hasn't completely moved on from her, because I really do like Batman and Catwoman as a couple, especially because, like, she's a bad girl, he's a good boy, you know, like, they have that kind of relationship to them. And it complicates things. It makes a character a little bit more complex and interesting, in my opinion. As far as other villains that you could explore, you could try to set up the Court of Owls, I guess. People are really excited about that. I don't really care. I'd much rather try to set up the League of Assassins. It's like, I like the more down-to-earth and realistic approach being taken with Batman in The Batman, but it's a double-edged sword because like I said before, I don't want to lose the fact that Batman is a fantasy character. I want some of those larger-than-life concepts to still make it to live action and still make it here. I want to see a Lazarus Pit. I want to see Clayface. I want to see a proper Killer Croc. I want to see all of that stuff. But we'll take it a little bit at a time. And if Warner Brothers have any idea what they're doing, for the sake of preventing audiences from getting confused, they should just fold Robert Pattinson into the DCU and have him be the primary Batman. But whatever, I guess. That's just my little wish list for the Batman Part 2. To sum up, Robin, Scarecrow and or Two-Face, a more dynamic difference between Bruce Wayne and Batman's personalities, redesigned Batman's suit, a little bit of Catwoman in it, and maybe a new Batmobile? Not that I don't like the one that we had, but, you know. And, no Penguin in this show, or in this movie. We'll keep Penguin in his own show for now, because people seem to really like the Penguin. I haven't watched it yet. Maybe I should. Maybe that'll be the next, like, big show that I do a video on. Anyway, tell me what you guys wish for. What's your wish list for the Batman Part 2? Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and educate me. As always, if you want more from me, go ahead and click somewhere on the screen. I'll take you straight there. See you oh my god. I'm leaving all this in, too.